Sorry. Okay. So I'm going to first read the script for the remotely conducted hybrid open meetings. Public participation guidelines. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full names for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. This meeting will be using Zoom, which provides a capability for the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to this meeting. The registration link can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed for the meeting. People registering to be an attendee must use their names, otherwise they will not be allowed to participate in discussion. Attendees will join in listening mode. They can click the raise hand button if they wish to speak. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in order they were raised. All questions should be directed through the chair. As a preliminary matter, my name is Susan McCarthy. I serve as chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals. In the event I have a conflict on an application, Lisa Botticelli, the current vice chair, or Elisa Allen, the current clerk, will serve as chair. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Lisa Botticelli.
Aye.
Elisa Allen. Here. Michael O'Mara. John Brescher.
Here.
And Jim Mondani.
Here.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Leslie Snell. Here. William Saad.
Here.
Paul Murphy.
Here.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Linda Williams. No. And Attorney Michael Wilson. Okay. Is there anyone else that I didn't have that's intending to speak? Okay. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Town of Nantucket Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Town of Nantucket Zoning Board of Appeals is convening in person and by video conference via Zoom app, as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video. Some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other people may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I or the acting chair notes otherwise. We will now turn to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I or the acting chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, question, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the floor is yielded to you and state your name before speaking. And if we wish to engage in conversation, please do so through the acting chair and take care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after the members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public who have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. Okay. So this is the regularly scheduled Town of Nantucket Zoning Board of Appeals, April 13th, 2003 meeting. Would someone approve the agenda as drafted, or make a motion rather to approve the agenda as drafted?
So moved.
Okay, so John made the motion, Michael seconded. Just go down the list. Elisa?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Myself? Aye, sorry. Michael and John.
Aye.
Okay. And approval of the minutes from February 9th, 2023 and March 11th, 2023. Lisa, you have.
I just had a couple of typos on page 4 of February 9th. There's a comment that I say, where is your plan that shows where the biblical piles are filled in? There should be helical piles. And then on page 5, another statement by me that says, well, the question is when you go to the basement and add a bathroom, it says bedroom, the bathroom, then that's another bedroom.
Did anyone else have any comments or revisions on those?
Motion with Lisa's change.
Okay.
Do you need a second to that motion?
Yes, please.
I'll second it.
Okay, so Michael has made the motion to approve the minutes and John has seconded. So again, we'll do a roll call. Elisa. Aye. Lisa.
Aye.
Myself. Aye. Michael.
Aye.
And Jim.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so at this point, we are going to close the public hearing and move on to executive session.
Were we going to do the Surfside Crossing?
Oh, you
update
want to do that first? Sorry. Yep, go for it.
Okay, so I just have an update for the board and the public relative to the Surfside Crossing 40B. They have chosen to proceed at their own risk while the HAC appeals are still pending. We've received the final plan set in the office. We received those on March 22nd. I have distributed those to the applicable town staff for review, to the engineer that you all chose earlier in the process for his final review, and that will be scheduled for your May 11th ZBA meeting. It is a 90-day review period, which is outlined in the decision and in the HAC decision. So that's the window that you have to work within.
And what is that 90-day date?
I didn't actually calculate it out, but it started on March 22nd.
Okay. And
Yeah.
has anybody reviewed can I ask questions?
Reviewed the plans?
No, can I ask questions?
Well, we were just going to do an announcement today. I don't know,
Okay.
Leslie, what do you think?
I
I
think
don't
if the
have to.
board has questions,
Okay.
that's fine.
Well, I was just questioning whether or not in this letter from Dennis Murphy, if these other conditions or the 25 items that they've requested have been received.
Yes, actually, I have already reviewed that. But you brought up a good point that I wanted to make. Whatever comments that we have already received and will receive will be distributed to you in your agenda packet for May 11th. So I think there may be some confusion that because they weren't distributed for today, that they weren't going to be distributed. They weren't distributed today because it's not a discussion item. We're going to package all of those together for you.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you could just update us on the day that the 90-day point. Thank you.
Okay.
Could I ask a question about?
Sure.
It's more litigation, but the town is in a suit, right? We're representing.
Currently, yes.
Is there anything that the town is going to do with regard to, say, a stay or something like that on this, or?
I can't really speak to that.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for Leslie before we move on from that one? Okay. Thank you for the update. Sorry, I didn't see that above executive session. Okay, so now we will close the public hearing portion of the meeting to enter into executive session. And we need someone to make a motion to go into executive session. Sure.
This goes back quite a few years. My recollection is that when you went into executive session, you voted to go out, and then the meeting was over.
So I think if you do, usually we do it at the end, but we're doing it at the beginning this time. So we're going to reconvene an open session after. So it's just I agree. I don't think we've done it. I don't think in my tenure, we've done it this way before.
This way?
I think because of,
Madam Chair, it was scheduled this way today because of town council.
Yeah.
So they could be heard at the beginning.
Yeah.
And for the record, I have a conflict on this, so I will be leaving the room.
Okay, and John is leaving the room as well. If you want to leave now and then we'll just vote without you. Okay, all right. So the board is going to entertain, or may entertain a motion to go into executive session under, general law, chapter 30A, section 21A3 for the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to litigation regarding an appeal of special permit by Guy Maddalone, ZBA application 1721, where the chair has determined that an open session meeting may have a detrimental effect. What?
Do I need to recuse from this? I mean, my client is the neighbor who he is suing.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because you,
Yeah. The project next door and went to, and here to the-
I don't even know what executive.
Yeah, what?
all right, I'll tell you. So
Oh, I should leave.
you should
We're
go.
not even talking, or it's not even on the agenda. is
Well,
it?
because it's executive session, so it's not for
Oh,
public,
it doesn't even, I got you.
it's not for public discussion. So,
Well,
where's Paul Murphy? No, not yet. So we're gonna vote to go into executive session. So,
It's a roll call.
yeah, so would someone make the motion to
Make
go?
the motion.
Okay, so Michael makes the motion to go into executive session. Someone second?
second.
All right, Jim or Elisa seconds. All those in favor, Elisa? Me, I, Michael, Jim, I. Okay, so when we're off, when the public's off the Zoom, Alex is on and we're off of film or whatever, let me.
How about off of microphone?
Sure.
So we did have a quorum to go into executive session. Did we vote?
I mean, I think Go get an ice cream at the ice cream store. It's a frappy hour.
Frappy hour?
Yeah.
Check one.
Don't go
That
yet.
sandwich
Check.
has ricotta and
Oh,
truffle.
the Bianca,
Yeah,
insane.
insane. I had it for the first time.
It's
What?
it's decadent.
This sandwich called the Bianca at Corn and Bread. It's
Just get it without the
ricotta.
onion, and it's
Oh,
like
yeah,
having
it has red onion in it.
What's in it?
It's goat cheese, truffle
me see it.
honey, and pistachios on lightly toasted amazing bread. It's
Yeah.
crazy. It's like having a big cheese and cracker for lunch. That's amazing.
It's really
so
good.
Decimal points.
It's really good.
Productive.
Like,
That's
Sort of.
Leslie, did we, so are we back live? Okay, so we reconvened in open session and voted, but should we do that again just for the,
Oh, yeah, every time you want,
for the record?
every
Okay,
single time.
and then,
Oh, that's a nice one.
okay, and then. All right, so we are back in open session.
Track.
Okay, we're back in open session. Before we get to 3721, we have a few to continue, so I'm gonna read them out, and then if someone would make a motion to continue. Looks like all of these are continued to May 11th. So we have application 09-22 Harris on Weweeder LLC, 50 Weweeder Avenue, 20-22 Stephen L. Cohen and Christopher P. Choma, trustees of 29 Monomoy Road Nominee Trust. 10-22 Paul P. Moran and Jean M. Moran for Washington Avenue, and 17-22 Nantucket Cottage Hospital, 16 Vesper Lane. Would someone make a motion to continue all of these to the regularly scheduled May 19th, 2023 meeting?
May
11, sorry, did I say 19? Sorry.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, so I got 3 seconds. So I heard the first one over here. So Jim made the motion, Michael seconded, and we can do roll call. So Elisa,
I,
Lisa. Lisa,
I,
myself, Michael,
Aye.
and Jim.
Aye.
Okay, so we have continued all of those to May 11. And now we will hear old business, application 37-21, 8 Bank Street, Attorney Michael Wilson presenting.
Thank you, Chair McCarthy and members of the board. Michael Wilson, for the record, on behalf of your applicants, Christie and Nicholas Amendolare. And this is with respect to the request for special permit approval, pre-existing non-conforming, in the setback nature being about a 12 square foot triangular portion of the roof plane. And as you know, over the last year, we've been discussing various aspects of how the construction will be implemented to mitigate or prevent any negative impacts in the neighborhood. To that end, my clients have engaged McCardle Associates, and Mr. Wayne McCardle is here to address any additional questions or any follow-up that you may have. And I would ask, hopefully at the end of the hearing, that you vote in favor of granting the relief we're requesting to allow this roof plane to go up about 1 foot. Keeping it in perspective, that is why we're before the board on that portion of the zoning. If I can answer any questions, I'd be happy to do so. Or Wayne McCardle.
Okay, does anyone want to start with a question for Attorney Wilson?
Just one clarification on this non-conformity. I'm trying to picture it, but is it something that can be resolved? The non-conformity, or is it just?
Well, the non-conformity is, it's a very historic part of the island where this was built. The triangular portion of the roof is in the setback. It's not
Right.
over the lot line.
Right.
So to,
Can that
and
be
if you look at
fixed?
the plot plan, it's a very small plot.
Yeah,
So the building can't really go any other direction other than what my clients are proposing to do, which is 1.5 stories up on one portion of it.
okay.
So no, unfortunately, we really can't. We can't move the building away from that setback. And if you take a look at really where it sits, it's on a bank. So that to the extent any butter would perceive a lot line or encroachment, it really doesn't make sense in this case because you've got quite a slope heading up that bank,
Okay.
which is not just a neighbor's property that you're going to be standing on seeing a roof plane within the setback. The nearest a butter that would be able to appreciate this would be at the top of the bank
Okay.
or across the street. The
I
other
guess,
side of the
I
street-
guess in my simple mind, you couldn't resolve that roof.
Well, I
overhang.
hate to lock the triangular portion of the building off, and I think
Yeah,
that's what you're asking.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Would really compromise what is already a very small structure, very little usable space in there, which is
Okay.
why my clients are hoping to put this, the back portion up and the basement below.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about, and maybe it's premature, but you saw the ruling from the health department, the SAC recommendation that says that no basement would
I
be.
saw the opinion letter. I would ask that it not be part of the zoning board of appeals review. And I also have done some independent research with respect to applicable sewer districts. And it may be that this portion of the island is going to benefit from sewer in the not too distant future. I would also suggest that we can fashion a decision from this board approving it with alternative aspects of what can be done from the zoning perspective only, because we still have the Board of Health to deal with.
Did you go to the Board of Health
We,
and get the opinion as like we requested?
I submitted a request for a variance and withdrew it because of the timing of the submission from the last time you had requested it. This is not a coordinated review. And it was also something that could have gone through a couple of different engineered iterations before we went in asking for variance relief for distance from the septic tank to the foundation wall.
But we were asking also about the interpretation of if the basement were to have a bathroom in it, it would be counted as a bedroom. And that the septic system could not be expanded beyond the one bedroom system it already is.
I'm not going to weigh in on the building departments. Mr. Murphy is here if you want to ask him about numbers of bedrooms, but we're not asking for zoning relief for numbers of bedrooms.
But that's what the septic was sized for, right?
Yeah.
The septic is a new, it's
Is
a
a
new
one
Title
bedroom.
V, which was installed by Gail Johnson when she sold this property
Right.
to your applicants. So the variances that are in place from the health department were for the upgrade to Title V, and it has already been issued a variance for its proximity to lot lines and proximity to the foundation that exists or the structure.
Just with the opinion letter makes it sound like a basement is not feasible. And that is a big part of the discussion that we're having relative to the safety of the road. So I do think it's applicable.
Fair enough, but I'm not, my applicants and my clients are not going to withdraw the request that the basement go in. And the basement is not going to be a portion of the zoning relief that's requested.
But it affects the means and methods of construction.
It certainly does, and you've received a significant amount of information from the engineer on that. About how they will shore up. Look, it's not in my client's interest to create a problem that's going to get them sued for damage to a neighboring property. So they've engaged McArdle in order to make sure that the means and methods are appropriate, as has been done for a number of other buildings that have received additions and lifting in Codfish Park. It's possible to do this with the means and methods that Mr. McArdle has presented. I would submit without causing any compromise to the neighborhood.
The letter from the Board of Health says any work to the foundation of the house will affect the structural integrity of the septic tank. The septic tank does not meet setbacks, but the leach facility does not also meet the setbacks, causing more concern for the integrity of the leach facility. There simply is not a safe setback of the tank and leach facility to the cottage. The previously approved variance was to allow for existing conditions of the cottage on the lot, not for new construction. The system is a one-bedroom system and cannot allow for any new additional bedrooms. And the construction to install a basement is new construction and will not comply with the setbacks of the septic tank and leach facility. So unfortunately, I think that it is a very small triangle that is triggering the need for zoning relief. But when that need for zoning relief is triggered, we typically look at the project as a whole. Whether whether, and it seems from this, if we did grant approval for the triangle piece, it doesn't look like you're going to get through the Board of Health with the project as it is. But regardless of that, my concern is more that not about we did ask for clarification from the Board of Health about the bedroom and whether the Board of Health considered it the room in the basement a bedroom because of the bathroom and the egress, but we can ask Paul Murphy about that. But the bigger concern for me in this opinion was that they are saying any work to the foundation of the house will affect the structural integrity of the septic tank. And that,
And it's new construction,
yeah,
and the new construction doesn't go with what was approved for the septic.
yeah. And so, yes, I guess the Board of Health will deal with that. But again, but for that triangle portion, you wouldn't be here. But now that you are, we look at the project as a whole, not just that one little triangle. If the project was only doing something in that one little area, then we would look at that area. But this is a whole massive project.
Well, it's not massive.
Well, it
Well,
is
the
for this,
undertaking
it is, the undertaking is for this property.
Undertaking. is
Yeah.
fine.
Again, it's an opinion letter from the Board of Health. We'll have the Board of Health to work with. And Jeff Blackwell here can speak to the issues that might obviate any Board of Health relief when it goes into a sewer district, which would take this off of your concern list. Mr. Blackwell?
Jeff Blackwell. There's been conversations with the sewer department and with Andrew Vorse, and there's going to be an article placed on the fall special town meeting to expand the sewer district to include this property. The simple solution, and not a technical one in any way, shape, or form, is to simply connect this property to the sewer that's on Front Street directly above the property. Then we don't have all these concerns about, well, number of bedrooms or setbacks to the existing septic system. And the existing septic system will simply become a drainage facility to accept roof runoff from the completed project. So that's the simple solution here, and it is the one that we are pursuing.
What would the timeline be if it got voted through at town meeting to have the sewer in place?
Well, at that point,
could
it
be
it
years.
becomes a sewer,
Right.
it becomes a simple sewer connection design of a single dwelling.
Oh, I
And
see.
that happens quickly.
They don't have to run additional sewer piping. You would do it from the site directly up to what exists.
Yes,
It
directly
doesn't
up
have to come
Beach
further
Street.
down Front Street.
Pardon me?
It doesn't have to be expanded down Front Street at all.
No, there's already a gravity sewer line at Front Street.
But they would have to pump up to it.
Commonly done, nothing technically difficult about
So
it.
what are we voting on at town meeting?
Pardon me?
What are we
Oh,
voting?
expanding the sewer district, because currently there are no properties. It's hard to believe, but none of Codfish Park is in the town sewer district.
Even though they could be pumping up to above, they're not in the district.
You're not allowed a sewer connection permit without having your property be in a sewer district. It's just a administrative rule.
Yeah, this information. We could hear from Wayne, I guess.
How many months have we been working on this? A year? So I think everything that we've heard so far today makes a lot of sense. What Jeff just said makes a lot of sense. If we grant the permit, the town may decide not to do it. And from what we've heard today, I think what we heard from Jeff is that if the town doesn't approve it to get into the sewer district, Wisconsin, then they're going to be using that house as it currently sits.
With no basement.
Well, if it's true that any work under the building is going to hurt the integrity of the septic system, I suppose they could put a new septic system in, but
I don't think you have the distance.
You don't have the
You need a
room.
variance to do it because they're too close to the foundation.
Yep.
well, they already have a new one in there.
As a variance,
Yes,
yes.
For the existing structure.
For
yes,
the existing structure,
Yeah.
1 bedroom. So there's no way they'll get a 2 bedroom.
I don't
system in
think
there.
so. But
So my only
But
concern is
that,
that,
that's not really, that's when our scope now is
Right.
going beyond.
that's what I was just gonna say.
well, there's no question.
The only,
The substantially more detrimental. And that's why I have the problem. I understand all the concerns. I just feel like all these concerns are being brought to the zoning board when it's outside. Are we gonna review every application like this? With regard to engineering studies and capacity of the septic tank, all those things, HDC, whether it's, looks appropriate. I mean, that's my concern here. And maybe these concerns need to be brought to the town. I don't kick the can down the road, but to the building department, but
Health
that's
department.
where I'm
Health
having
department.
trouble
Health
here.
department.
Right, because
Or health department, but the building
And/or-
department with regard to,
And-
again, I've harped on this, making a decision on whether the cliff is gonna cave in is, to me, not a zoning board decision, but I understand since they
disagree.
are, since the non-conformity is continuing. Yeah, I see where our scope has and will continue to go beyond just that specific thing. I just think we're going way beyond that here, but that's my opinion.
I think they'll go ahead, Mike.
I disagree with some things and agree with this last comment
Mhm.
that we've gone beyond. All along, we've asked for certain information. And maybe it's been slow in coming, drips and drabs. This was a pretty big drop right here. And I'm not voting on whether they're ever going to be able to build it. And I wouldn't want to handicap that one. But as far as the zoning board goes, I think they've given us the information we requested. And I think we should leave it at that.
I know, I mean, I feel like the basement adds a lot more complexity to this project. And so if they can't do the basement, it does affect, I think, the discussion. Because it takes away the complexity of the 90% of the complexity of that project, which
Right.
is driving the helical piles and protecting that bank. So if they can't do the basement for whatever reason, they can't get the variance for the septic system or well, I guess, if in September, if they can tie into town sewer, that's a whole different discussion, but until that's a given, I feel like the septic system is a big part of this discussion and the basement is a big part of it. But I do understand it is overstepping from that degree, but it's part of the whole project. And it's where a lot of the concerns lie.
and we've done, this isn't like the, we're singling out this project. We've done this type of review on Kite Hill. I think there was a project on Orange Street, and maybe one up behind me. Anyway, I think that if we're comfortable with the, the means and methods and information, engineering report and all of that we've been provided, if we're comfortable with the conditions that we added with other projects of like, the, the neighbors having the project manager's number, the pre-construction surveys, all of that. I just want to make sure that whatever decision that we put out is not blessing any of those things that are outside of our scope, right? Like, if we approve this, we've gotten this information about the Board of Health and whatever. I just want to make sure that our decision is clear, that we are limiting it to what is our scope, and those other items, septic, Board of Health, the building department, all that will be taken care of there. Because once in a while, we've gotten something that may have been approved by another board, and then that somehow is like, oh, well, they approved it, so it's good, it's kosher. Our approval is only for what we are, what is our purview, and the rest of it,
Yeah,
because for the rest of it, reading this recommendation from the Board of Health, it doesn't look great for the project, but that's not our.
But if
Yeah.
we deny it, let's say today, and then we get this approval in September for extending town sewer, would they still want to do the same design and the same plan if they were then given?
Because they'd have more room.
Accessibility to town sewer. I mean, that's another question that might need to be considered. If suddenly you are allowed to have more than one bedroom, is this what you want approved?
Well, then they just come back. They'd come back and amend the.
But if
to
we deny
modify.
it today, they won't be allowed to come
Oh.
back, or will they? I don't think they
No.
will.
Right, they wouldn't be.
well,
able-
then you're saying you're denying it because of the septic issue. That you
Not
would approve it
necessarily.
if it was hooked up to sewer.
Not necessarily, but
Right.
it is something to consider.
And Susan,
I don't
what
want to
you
give a
said-
denial and then they are disabled from doing other things with the property.
You
and I
said
don't
it
wanna-
more eloquently than I did. That's my concern about the brief of our range that we're almost
But I also don't want to give an
de facto
approval.
approving or disapproving based on what other.
Right, I think we can say in the decision something about reference that there was a lot of information that was given to us, and this project will have to go through other boards and get their approvals for that, and this approval is focused on
The triangular
on
12 square feet.
whatever it's well, the triangular, but also the means and methods and that, but we're
Yeah. But if we approve it as it is, then
not
also,
rubber stamping everything, we're just approving, that's why
no,
I'm saying.
I know, but I'm just also putting it out there that if we do approve it, then they have to stick to this plan. And what if they got
Then they'd have to-
sewer?
Then they'd have to come
Then
back. and
come back
modify
again.
it, have to
Okay,
modify it.
all right.
But I just want, but we would just, if we're denying or not denying, it's gonna be based on, or if we're continuing, it needs to be based on, I think, that the means and methods, we still have questions about the means and methods, or whatever, the information we have about septic is informative, but it's not, it's not our job to base our decision based on that. That is for another board
Yeah,
to decide once this either goes forward or not.
right. The next question is, what if they did get approval today? Would they be doing construction all summer there?
No.
We would.
So you'd have to wait till the fall anyway to do anything.
That's right. And
And by then you
answer your
might
prior
know,
question, if you deny it, it's a 2-year prohibition before
Right.
we can come back to you. So
right?
no, the construction would have to wait, and we'd have to actually go through the process to get the building permit, which is going to require the relief that we need from the other board and or sewer districting.
Okay, I'm just getting clarification on how it all
Can I ask a question on the means and methods? You guys you talked about the retaining wall staying in place, right? The concrete wall stays? That's behind the building? I think last meeting, I think you talked about that.
Wayne McCardle Gann
Yeah.
Associates. The existing CMU block wall is going to stay in place.
So how did you get the piles?
What they will do is they'll cut the pile, the wall will stay, the house will be removed from the site, the wall will be cut to get to drill the piles into place. And as those piles will extend above to the height of the existing wall, it'll be shored with timber lagging. So that whole west side, we're going to reinforce it with a new wall, the existing wall with a new wall. And then the eventual, that wall will be used as the outside form for the new foundation.
I have a question.
Sure.
Did I hear you say you were gonna move the house from the site?
The house has to get. moved
Okay,
off the site.
because somewhere in today's information, I read that the house was going to be turned on site to make so you could access everything under the building that needed to be accessed.
We can't, right? There's no room to turn it, right?
Well, I was questioning that
Yeah.
myself.
That's nothing to do with me.
Okay,
Can somebody answer the question about that? It-
let me see if I can find.
Yeah, the house is gonna be removed off-site during construction.
To the extent that the construction methodology requires it, it's got to be relocated in order to install the shoring of the bank and the installation of the foundation. Is there room at the adjacent turnaround? Would that require a permit from the town of Nantucket? Is there a location remote that the structure can be picked up and relocated to during the course of excavation and shoring? That's a possibility as well. Again, all for building department and town and
Right.
Nantucket
So
permitting.
it doesn't sound like, it sounds like it has to move, right, Wayne?
Well, it has to get picked up and it has to get removed off the site in order to do the
Yes, to do
bank
his work.
shoring, right? And then to put the foundation.
Right, so it has to get moved off the site.
But I'm not sure if you're familiar, when you do visit Codfish Park and you run down the ocean and you come around to the backside on the bank side,
Mhm.
there's quite a large paved area. And we do know that that is in fact not, according to the fire department, a safe fire access, although some maps do denote it as such. They've indicated that no apparatus to get down that little angle piece there.
What is
so-
that, public access?
It is public access. Yes, the cliff walk.
Uh-huh,
And there's another one down on the backside of
Yep.
Codfish Park when you make the first curve.
yep.
So there's a lot of space, a lot of macadam in that area where Bank Street makes the turn toward the east to get you back onto.
And that's
Um,
where the house will be put. while
That's
they're-
where the staging materials and where the house will be located to. And then if it needs to be physically taken out of Codfish Park or relocated,
Is that town
the
land?
investigation is with the town, with the parking lot, the sand parking lot that's down by the Codfish Park proper. There's also a park down there. So there's a
But
few
closer,
locations.
right next to the house where the the little footpath comes down. You said that is not, as far as the fire department's concerned, that's not their access, but it's a public access, so
Right.
that comes down and that's owned by the town.
It is.
So the structure will be put on town property while they're putting in the foundation.
I'm not going to be able to commit to that. It would be up to the town to authorize that. What I'm suggesting is there is a lot of space paved over at the intersection of Bank Street and I suppose whatever it turns into as it makes the left hand or it makes the left-hand
Left.
turn toward the east.
Mhm.
So there's movement area in there. There's a place where this small structure can be picked up, put on cribbing, put on Toscana type equipment and moved to accomplish what needs to happen on site. Does it have to get completely off the site? That is beyond me.
But they're gonna need permission from somebody else.
Certainly going to need over the
Yeah.
road
And
permits.
even
Yes.
to use that area as a staging area, you need permission.
Over the road permits or temporary road closure permits would all be necessary if we're going to use that portion of the road. But that is a portion that's been identified as accessible and would not interfere with traffic.
Just to revisit my comments, as long as it's in the minutes of this meeting, that the applicant said it's gonna have to be moved from the site, I'm fine. But in the latest
Packet.
packet we got from the applicant, they talk about turning the house on the site. Now, I don't think it works anyway, and it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. but I think we should just memorialize it, that it is going to be moved off site.
It needs to be for this to be accomplished.
Well, there's no room on the lot.
Well, it
I
sounds
would
like,
agree with you, Mr. O'Meara. It would seem practically difficult to do the work and the shoring and the excavation with it there on such a small locus. But we do have proximate vacant property. A couple of locations that aren't far. You would not have to go up the hill.
and then there was also a letter, I think, from you, Wayne, about the little rubble wall in your test pits. Right, let's see. No foundation or footing was observed in the depths explored, the walls compromised very sensitive. So no footing under that wall.
There is none that we saw. We wouldn't be touching that wall. It would remain in place just as it is.
And you don't think you have no concerns that any of the drilling will vibrate anything to.
There'd be almost little or no vibrations
That's
from
why
the
you're doing
drilling.
that first.
Yeah.
Geez.
And where we, as the opposition's consultant asked us to do, we looked at bracing it. We're bracing it internally.
There will be vibration. I just know it. There will be. There will. You can say there won't be, but I know there will be. We all know, we've all been near job sites. There will be. So I want to go on record as saying that I don't agree with that.
Where is the bracing called out? It's really hard to see these drawings. They're pretty small.
I have a full size set. It's not like that.
Yeah, or you can just point out what drawing they're on and just show us where all this information is, since these are gonna be part of the record.
Full size.
Oh, sorry. Oh. That's okay. I'll put this down here.
Middle Gully Beach Street side. This side is gonna be, the side that'll be retained. Everything.
Right, this is the foundation wall right there, right?
That's the existing. Yeah,
That you're cutting out to
Yeah.
put the.
We'll cut it out at these spots where the drilling and we'll leave it everywhere else. The green is, the level bracing. It'll just be, and it'll stay in place as the foundation is being poured.
Okay. And that bracing is just
Yeah.
indulge me because I'm.
The cut through, so you can see there's the rubble wall behind, the existing CMU wall. Does sort of steps up and does this behind the existing building.
And these are the piles,
Those are the piles.
right?
This is the level of bracing, struts and rails
Okay,
that'll be put in. That'll all, like I said, the bracing will stay in place until the first floor members are foundation support and the first floor in place.
So that's a cross section of how they go down into the ground in between these beams that are, what are these?
those are the piles
Yeah, that's a cross section. Look
Yeah.
at the welding
From-
details
from above.
from
From
above,
above,
yeah.
looking down.
and then these are this is the bracing, right? Is that what that is? The struts and the.
But are these steel I-beams?
Yep. Full steel,
Mhm.
steel, this is a whale, that's a strut, that is the solar pump.
And then the PT pieces get put in between as it goes down. So
And actually, as
these,
it goes up, so the first
Yep.
thing they'll do is the house get moved,
Mhm.
they'll cut the wall, they'll install that western.
How
side.
deep-
First thing will be.
how deep do these I-beams
there's
go
a-
into the ground?
There's a cross section.
Shown on the elevation.
Below foundation, how far into the ground do they go?
There was a cross section someplace.
About 9 or 10 feet.
Below the basement foundation.
Yeah, they'll be drilled in, yeah.
Because the
Page
groundwater
27.
is,
And tell me exactly what the machine is that's gonna push them down and how that's gonna happen.
It's,
Oh, yeah.
it's a typical, it looks like an excavator.
Yeah,
It has a steel can, it's steel can that they drill, and they can push the can if they drill down.
so they drill into the dirt, they put the I-beam in,
No,
and then they backfill it?
They drill into the dirt and push a can down to keep the soil from coming in.
Uh-huh,
Once the can is down to the design depth, they
Uh-huh.
drop the pile inside,
Take,
and then they
see
throw it
that?
concrete.
Oh, they leave it. Uh-huh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's the section that shows it.
So
here,
at no
let's-
point are those getting pounded into the ground.
Nothing
They're
from
pre-drilling. Okay, good.
Pre-drilling. They're going, the piles are going to pre-drill.
Got it. I got it now.
Yeah, that's the section that shows
Yep.
where they end.
9 to 10 feet below the poured floor of the basement.
And then, like I said, the foundation will pour up against it. This will all be permanent. Everything will stay in place and the wall and the steel beams will all act as
It's about 8.
support the roadway.
It's about 8 feet below the bottom of the excavation.
Poured floor will be.
Right.
Yep.
That makes sense?
So is this front corner gonna be exposed? This front corner, if you're looking at the front door, the front left corner, is that corner gonna be exposed above grade?
It shouldn't be, it's gonna look just like the wall looks right now.
Uh-huh.
You're talking about this corner.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, just that proximity is,
To the existing pad.
yeah.
I mean. We'll be done.
I think it's yours anyway.
Are there any other questions for the bracing?
Does that satisfy you?
Mhm.
Okay, so, so is everyone comfortable with the means and methods that have been provided to us thus far?
I don't have any more questions.
Okay. If we are to, well, first, is there anyone else in the public that wanted to speak on this one? We've heard from the applicant, but is there anyone else who wants to add anything at this time?
Madam Chair, we have a hand raised on Zoom.
Okay, have they had it raised for a while? All right, why don't I go to Zoom first and then I'll come back out to you guys. Okay,
Okay, we have Jonathan Fitch.
okay.
You're on, Jonathan.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the board. I represent Jeffrey Gardner, manager of 9 Broadway LLC, and Ann Gardner. You started off with reference to the staff recommendation made by the Nantucket Health Department dated January 19th, 2023. We suggest that recommendation contains information that is relevant to your determination as to whether the project would be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing conditions. The factual finding in the staff recommendation states at the end, there simply is not a safe setback of the tank and leach facility to the cottage. Previously approved variance was to allow for existing conditions of the cottage on the lot, not for new construction. So the conclusion of the health department in this January 19th document is that there is simply not a safe setback of the tank. And that is relevant to your determination about whether or not this project is detrimental to the neighborhood. My clients received on April 5th, a package, an updated package filed by the Amendolare. And we filed a letter dated April 10th. On Monday, came in after the package was put together, but I understand you've been provided with a copy of it. And that includes a letter that our geotechnical engineers, Muser Rutledge Consulting Engineers, MRCE, have submitted on review of the updated materials. And their letter states very simply that the Amendolares have not adequately responded to the issues previously raised by MRCE in their October 5th, 2022 letter, their May 10th, 2022 letter, and their February 23, 2022 letter. So in terms of the means and methods of this project, have they been sufficiently explained to you? And is there a reasonable basis for you to conclude that this project will not be detrimental to the neighborhood? I believe that the record amply supports that you don't have a sufficient factual basis to make that finding. And that's where it goes beyond a mere 13 square feet. The legal standard is detriment to the neighborhood. And these Board of Health issues in the January 19th memorandum, and all of the reasons stated in the letter of MRCE dated April 10th support that the neighborhood is at risk. That there is a reasonable basis to conclude that the neighborhood will be suffer a detrimental impact. I'm going to ask Ann Gardner in a second to address some of the geotechnical engineering issues. But in summary, my clients ask that you deny the application for a special permit. And in the event that you decide to grant the special permit, which we hope you won't do, but if you do, we request that it be conditioned upon the applicant providing Board of Health approval for the pending application for a second variance on this property. Thank you so much. And I'd like Mrs. Gardner to have a chance now to address some of these engineering issues with you in more detail and to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Fitch. Mrs. Gardner, did you want to?
Thank you. I'm Ann Ramsey Gardner, owner of 9 Broadway. Just in brief, the construction risks remaining are implementation risk. Some of these you've already addressed or brought up. Implementation risk. There's the surrounding soil is loose, fine sand soil, and there's a high groundwater table, both of which could create washout between the timber boards and below the timber boards of the schedule of excavation supports, whether the conditions are dry or wet, which could cause erosion of middle gully and would be exacerbated during a storm. Groundwater level would rise, the site would flood and could create erosion conditions. The septic system, I'd like to state that there will be a difference of over 30 feet between the bottom of excavation and Front Street. Pumping effluent up that high is unrealistic per our geotechnical engineer. If there were to be just a septic system, it's a 600 square foot site. The basement now will take up most of that volume. So there's not really a leaching area under the house now. It will go beyond the site, and special conditions will be needed, or there will be health issues for the inhabitants of the house and the neighboring residents. Regarding the implementation risk, please keep in mind that the construction duration will likely be 1 to 2 years in my experience, and I have been in real estate construction and architecture for 30 years. I know a schedule has never been provided, although it's been requested, but that is highly likely, and the foundation could be exposed to weather for many months. So that implementation risk is significant. There's a structural risk. They've not addressed the existing tree, and it will be removed because the schedule of excavation shows that it goes right through the tree. They've also not designed for vehicle traffic, and it is an escape route for Codfish Park. So that needs to be added to the drawings. There is recourse risk. There are no monitoring procedures yet defined for the retaining walls or the abutters' homes, and there are no stop work thresholds defined. Toscana, if you'll remember from their quote in the original proposal, has no provision for the abutters, specifically because the Amendolares are to provide builder's risk. But as we discussed in previous sessions, builder's risk only covers the construction company and the Amendolares. It does not cover the abutters, and no insurance provisions have been provided by the owners of a bank for abutters. And we did request an escrow to cover potential costs to settling of our property foundations, et cetera, which has not been provided. These significant risks are evidence that this one project, a small vacation rental home for one family, would put a neighborhood and historic district at risk. We request that you deny their request.
Thank you. And did you want to add, could you just come to the microphone and identify yourself? Thank you.
Hi, Margaret Van Duzen, 7 Front Street. So we're the house directly across Middle Gully from 8 Bank Street, and we're right on Front Street. We don't have a foundation. Our house is supported on the bank itself by concrete pillars of an indeterminate age. So we're very concerned about this, but structurally. But I'd also really like to talk about what's going on here in terms of the site itself. Because the septic system is the front yard, the septic tank is 18 inches from the house itself, and the leach field is the front yard too. I don't know how this could be constructed because all of the staging or any lay down is going to have to be on the street. Because I'm assuming you can't start putting all your construction materials or equipment on top of the septic system. The risk here is that it will destabilize the bank and damage houses and also Middle Gully in this. And I think they're really trying to put a square peg in a round hole here. This is a very small site. It can't support a 3-level house with 3 bathrooms. And that is precisely what the owners are trying to build here. And Mr. Wilson said from day one in these hearings that the reason they need a special permit is to build the basement. And I think whether something could happen at town meeting down the road that could potentially allow them to pump up to Front Street is just so highly speculative and so many years in the future that, you know, if that's the case and they have to come back to you for an amendment, at that point that's not really workable. The project in front of you now is this with a tank 18 inches from the house. The site is trying to accommodate groundwater, stormwater, and wastewater on the site. And the basement really does alter everything in terms of the hydrology here. They're proposing to take the stormwater now and also throw it in the front yard. Whether that works with the septic system, I don't know. But the basement really eliminates half of the infiltration on this site. And that's because it will prevent any horizontal infiltration, either from the septic system or the stormwater by putting this in. The stormwater, if it can't be somehow put in the front yard with the leach field, is gonna run down Beach Street. And we already know that at the corner of Beach Street and Codfish Road, it's sinking right now. And really can't take this kind of runoff. And also maybe the septic system won't be able to handle it at that point in time. I'd like to talk about the groundwater levels a little bit here. Many factors obviously will influence the groundwater. And those are temperature, tides, rainfall, the moon. And so while there is today a little less than 4 feet between the basement bottom, and now we know there's actually 9 or 10 feet further that, I don't know what you call them. What do you call the things that go below the footings?
Pile.
Okay, into the groundwater, right up against the bank. No one understands how groundwater moves when it hits that bank. There's never been any studies on that. But the idea that we would put this right up against the bank and then it's so deeply into the groundwater, I really think you need to think about, and you particularly need to think about it in terms of sea level rise. Because what we do know, and people are not talking about it that much, is how groundwater increases with sea level rise. And this is going to happen all over Codfish Park. This is not some stable level of groundwater as it exists today. It will only continue to increase. So what should the ZBA do? I think this was in front of the Board of Health in January. And when the owner saw that recommendation from the health department, they didn't withdraw their application in front of the Board of Health, but they took it off the agenda. And it's my understanding that it's just in limbo over there. You know, apparently the strategy or part of the strategy is not to fully share that information in that recommendation with this board. But you did ask them about whether or not it would be considered a second bedroom. And I think under the Title V regulations, it in fact would be and would meet that requirement. And the owners can take the beds out in a drawing, but that doesn't make it not a bedroom. And I think, you know, it was a reasonable request by you on how the Board of Health would look at that. And the owners could have easily come in with that information today, but have chosen not to. I think you could continue this, or you could vote on it today, and I hope you'll deny it. But I think you could continue it because the owners could go in front of the Board of Health next week. They could get this on the agenda, or they could go in front of them in May. They've already filed. You're not asking them to file. That application is in fact in. So I think it just, this site just can't take this kind of development on it. Mr. Wilson said from day one, the reason we're here is because of the basement. So the idea that somehow you would condition this for a totally hypothetical, whether they could pump it up onto Front Street and expand the sewer district is not the project in front of you today. So we really appreciate the consideration that you've given to this over time. And this is such a risky project in this area, and we'd ask you to deny it. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go back to you, is there anyone on Zoom who with their hand up?
No, there are no hands up on Zoom.
Okay, so let's go to Mr. Blackwell.
Jeff Blackwell. I would like to address some of the concerns that the neighbors have brought forward about the septic system, the Board of Health, and so forth. As a representative of the Amendolares, I can tell you we've moved on from the septic system. there's no way we're going to get a variance from the Board of Health for new construction variances for setbacks to any part of that septic system. We have to tie to the town sewer. And that is not a stretch. The sewer districts are routinely expanded at town meetings. And there's nothing technically difficult about pumping sewage up a hill. It is old technology and it is done on Nantucket. Permits are issued monthly for that sort of connection to town sewer, gravity sewers. So I do not want the zoning board of appeals to think that we're pursuing anything with the Board of Health. It's a dead end. We have to tie to town sewer. It's really the only viable alternative here. Pardon?
I can't find them.
The other, there's been a lot of concern expressed and representations about groundwater. I've been monitoring the groundwater on several projects in Sconset over the last 3 months. And also monitoring the USGS monitoring well that is existed on Nantucket for 50 years or more. The data is automatically uploaded to the national website and is available immediately. The groundwater reading that I measured at this property in February corresponds to the highest groundwater level that I've seen on any of the wells that I've been monitoring in Sconset. And that is the basis of the groundwater separation of 3.8 feet. A historical comparison between the current groundwater level or the level in February and past years is we're seeing that the groundwater level this year is about 14 inches higher. It's a very high reading this year compared to last year. So the 3.8 foot separation from the slab on this proposed basement and a high groundwater level is a conservative number. To have nearly 4 feet of sand, beach sand type material that is highly permeable, we are not going to see a variation in that with a moon or a high tide. We're far enough inland that the tidal variation of groundwater is very small in inches. And, you know, I'm confident that not only do we not need to pump once the project is complete, because every project I've ever been involved with where there's a significant separation of groundwater in highly permeable sands, there's no need for footing drains. There's no need for backup pumping. And any rainfall that is incident to the roof of the structure or to this site is going to be infiltrated as it is throughout every other property in Codfish Park. If you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to address those. Thank you.
Sarah, do you want to speak?
Yes, thank you. Madam Chair, Sarah Alger, I represent Wilhelmina Austin. First, I'm going to say I agree with everything that was said by the gardeners and their counsel. I appreciate Mr. Blackwell finally coming forward on the septic system. I think that's correct, that they can't do anything if they don't connect to sewer. So if you're inclined to approve this, I'm urging you to deny it, but if you are inclined to approve it, then I would ask that it be conditional upon the property being brought into the sewer district and a sewer connection being made. Otherwise, I don't see how the project can go forward. And in addition, it's kind of disturbing to just be hearing today this new information about the building having to be moved off-site and town land potentially being used as a staging area. This project is significantly more detrimental to the neighborhood than what's currently there. We have no idea if the town will even allow the building to be moved onto town land and for the land to be used for staging. I don't think it can go up out of Codfish Park because of the bridge. So if they can't figure that out, it's going to be a problem. It just doesn't seem as if this project has been all that well thought out. We've been doing this for over a year, and it seems like every time we come here, there's some new piece of information that we're getting. So I would urge you to deny it. If they can change it significantly, they can come back within the 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. So after hearing what Attorney Fitch had to say, the Gardners, Attorney Alger and Mr. Blackwell, I think the most the biggest news to me today was that they know they can't increase the septic. There won't be a basement unless they can tie into sewer. And that's unfortunate that we're just hearing that today after working on this. I think you guys said a year almost. Yeah. So, and I hate to say this at this point, but is it premature to approve if you can't go forward as it's proposed right now? You know you can't unless you get, it's sort of, unless you get sewer approval. There's
And the right to put the building
I totally
someplace.
agree with that.
like, what are we talking about then? Because we're looking at plans for something that as it stands now, can't even happen. I feel like if the sewer, the tie into the sewer should have been gotten first or confirmation from the Board of Health. So then you could come to us with a zoning, with a plan that actually works with what you're allowed to do. I think if I don't see a point in approving this if it can't happen. It can't happen today. It can only happen if at some point down the road at town meeting, it's approved and allowed to be connected to sewer. If that doesn't happen, then the basement goes away and you have to work with what you have and reconfigure this to try to make it work for your clients in the way that they wanted it, right? I mean, the first meeting was, this was going to be their house that they were going to live in with their kids, and they needed to make it be a 2-bedroom house for them to live here in Nantucket. This was their, this was their house that they got for, not the words forever home weren't used, but like for their family. And it just doesn't seem that this is able to be done at this time.
Well, and I'm also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I don't. And I agree with that, but I also don't want to deny it and disable them from coming to, cutting them off for
No, I
2
agree.
years. I don't think that would be fair either, but I think it's unfair to ask us to give them approval on something that they don't even know if they can get from other boards. I feel like if you want to stay with this, if you get your sewer connection to town sewer, then come back to us with the same plan if you want.
This with the means and methods, and we're like, okay, this is works.
I don't
this
want
is
to,
great.
I don't want to
You
prove
can't
it
do it
because we don't know if they're going to get access to town sewer or not.
Or
Leslie,
where
let-
they're gonna put the building.
Because
this
the
is
way
under
this- the
construction and the
way-
staging area and the parking and.
Dealing with the sewage right now is not allowed if there's new construction, and the basement is new construction.
Right. One thing we haven't talked about, which we did talk about with other decisions in Sconset, was about the road closure, the parking, asking
The
people
one
to
when we
carve-
did the shop, the
Yeah,
there in Wisconsin, that was
Yeah,
a big.
there was
part
a
of
lot
the
more
discussion.
talk about that, but Leslie, you had your hand up, so I'd like to, I just feel like we keep going around and around in
Well, but,
circles on this one.
but we
and
keep
it's-
getting new information
I
too,
know, but
which
it's
makes,
just-
prolongs the situation. So I don't think that it's us not being able to make up our minds. It's finding out, uncovering new elements to the application too.
Okay, so Madam Chair,
Yeah.
said this at the last meeting, and I'm going to say it again, and Mr. Mandani said it earlier, you all have veered far outside of your jurisdiction. And I understand that you wanted to give people an opportunity to voice their concerns, for you all to explore it, but all you need to make is a substantially more detrimental finding, and that's what you need to stick to. And this happens periodically, not very often, where there's basically a chicken and the egg situation where people need to go to different boards for different things. And one board says, well, I want you to go to the other board first. And the other board says, well, I want you to go to the other board first. And then the person's caught in the middle. And I think, you need to stick to your jurisdiction, and the burden is on them to get the relief that they need to get from whatever other boards they need to get it from, or to get added into the sewer district so they don't have to deal with the Board of Health, or, whatever that is. But, that's on them. And if they need to come back and amend their permit from you, then they'll have to come back. Or if they're able to proceed with it, then they can proceed. But I think you all need to, stick to what the zoning bylaw tells you should be looking at, and apply appropriate conditions, or decide that you don't think it's appropriate at all and deny it.
I agree with you. I mean, everything you're saying is true. I think it's frustrating from where I'm sitting that we've been talking about the septic for months. And how this is going to work, and the septic. Well, it turns out the septic isn't going to work, and they have to tie into sewer. If that had been disclosed earlier, we would have saved a lot of time and discussion about something that is a real concern for everyone. All right, so if everyone,
Can I also just
Yeah.
ask one more question? Who do they have to get approval from for where they are going to stage and where they are going to put the structure? Does that go through the building department? Who gives them permission?
It's not us.
Property.
I know it's not us, but I am curious who it is.
If they want to store it on town property, they would have to go through the select board. They would obviously need, street closing permits if they're going to store it on the street, which again goes through town administration. So there's another process for that.
Okay, but I just wanted to double check on that. I know it's not us.
okay, so if we are going to entertain a motion today, we do have some conditions to talk about. And
Could I
Yeah.
just get one more clarification? So you cannot build the basement without the approval, is that right? Without the approval of the septic system or the.
Board of
You would
Health.
need a variance from the Board of Health to locate the foundation that's proposed within the proximity of the existing septic tank.
Yeah.
And that is not something that the engineers have decided makes sense. To suggest that we've been talking about septic systems for months really goes to the heart of why are we talking about septic systems in the zoning board of appeals? Mr. McCardle, I believe, has established very good engineered responses to the board's legitimate concerns about the means that you've identified for stabilizing and installing the wall, installing the foundation. Mr. Murphy and the building department is going to be in charge of making sure that no building permit issues until all of the things that the building department needs to see are in place, which would be tying into or having a way to get rid of the sewage. Mr. Blackwell has identified errors in the opposition's opinions about how groundwater affects this site. And Ms. Snell has indicated to you that there is a scope here for the board to look at. And I submit that they've established the means are going to not substantially impair the integrity of this neighborhood. So the question I think for the board is, at the end of the project, when this roof plane is slightly higher in the air than it is now, is that going to be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood? Because that's the nature of the zoning relief that triggers us to be here. So could that roof plane stay in the exact same elevation and not be before this board? Possibly. But for the roof plane going up that small amount in that setback, that's what we're asking for the relief on. And I think you can make the finding that there will be no negative impact on the neighborhood at the end of this project when that roof plane is up. The distance it's proposed, the 12 to 18 inches of about 12 square feet. So I would ask the board to sort of redirect. How can you make sure that at the end of the project, that isn't going to be substantially more detrimental than the rest of the new construction that has happened in Codfish Park that has gone on significantly? This is not being proposed, the HDC's approved this. This is not being proposed to be any massive structure down there. The lot size drives that. And of course, the building commissioner is going to determine when a building permit can be issued and whether the site and the staging area is sheeted over with steel or it's in a remote location and trucked in. But those are not, I would submit, parts of what the zoning code contemplates. I think you're well within your rights with the information that you've been provided by the experts that you've asked for. And yes, this has taken a year, although there's been many months where we've not been before you. Where I think that you are able to make the determination that this project, one, can go forward with the construction methodology and not have any detrimental effect on the neighborhood. That to the extent you're interested in the sewerage, that has been addressed and nothing can happen until that happens, according to Mr. Blackwell and his information. And the aesthetic of this building, at the end of the day, having that roof plane that much higher is not going to impact anybody's aesthetic experience in Codfish Park. I would challenge anybody to drive down there after this project is done and say that roof plane is higher. Therefore, this zoning has failed us. That's not really what I think you're here to do. I think you really are here to say, have they established to our satisfaction that they can construct it without impacting the neighborhood? And I would submit they have. And at the end of the project, is it going to be harmonious with the nature of zoning in Codfish Park? And I would submit to you that it is. Thank you.
Thank you. You just identify yourself and then I
Yes.
want to move on.
I'm Lisa Soder. I live at 13 Broadway. I'm a year-round resident and my house is at the top of Middle Gully Road. So I'm the person whose aesthetic would be affected the most, but I'm not here to talk about that. We started this meeting with the statement from you that the small triangle in the application request triggers your involvement. And that once you're involved, that you have to look at the project as a whole. The new information submitted today concerning the possibility of town sewer being available does not change anything because the inquiry is not only about the septic. A finding that this project for one rental property will not be more detrimental to an entire neighborhood must take into account the fact that there's going to be drilling on an endangered coastal bank. That's, I think from today's conversation, it sounded like the pilings are 10 feet below the basement, which is 10 feet below the plane that it's on right now. So you would need to find that this will not detrimentally impact the structural integrity of the coastal bank and of the entire historic district for this to work. If you do choose to vote today, we ask that you deny the applicant's application. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie, do we have, I thought that I had it, but
Could I
oh,
make a
sorry.
point of order, please?
Sure.
With respect to the jurisdictional limits of the Conservation Commission here, that last piece of information that you were provided is not accurate and it's not a coastal bank under the Wetland Protection Act or the local regulations.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a list of standard conditions that we do for a project like this, where we've asked for geotechnical? and all that? I think, yeah,
I'm sorry. Finish, go
no, I
ahead.
was gonna say, I think I had pulled one out, but it's at my office and not here.
I think if we were to vote today and the vote was to approve, that it should be subject to conditions that we will put together and present to every member of this board and the applicants and the people in the audience that want to read it. So we'd make an approval subject to approval of conditions. that don't currently exist. Because we're gonna have to make, if it is approved, we're gonna have to make, go back to some professional engineering documents and list them by date, page. And there's gonna be a lot involved in this.
So a suggestion, the planning board occasionally does something similar. And they will vote to approve a project. They'll close the public hearing. And then we'll draft a decision for just the board to review and comment on at the next meeting. But the public hearing portion will be closed. So that way there's no new discussion. It's only about whatever's in the decision and what's already been discussed. You don't have to close the public hearing, but
Yeah, I
You
think
know,
that's-
you-
I think that's fine, because I think there's a lot. There's detail in those conditions that I don't think would be effective to try to suss out right now. Yeah. Okay. Does the board have, anyone on the board have any additional questions or comments at this time? No. So would someone make a motion then to approve the relief as requested? Well, first, okay, so do you procedurally close the public hearing first?
well, there's an important piece to that. If you close the public hearing, you can't accept new information. But you could vote to approve it, but keep the hearing open. So that way, if something new came up, you could discuss it, but that sort of goes back to the talking in circles piece.
Yeah.
Just don't close it then. Why would you close the public hearing? You could
Well,
take a
you
vote
close-
during the, with
Close
the-
public hearing so that we could take a vote to approve or deny.
but you can take that vote with the public hearing open.
So you want,
Well, in case there's more discussion after the vote,
okay,
right? Because normally we don't close the public hearing before we take a vote.
right, but I guess
Well,
we're talking about doing it for the conditions. So could you,
Conditions are gonna be several pages.
could you,
If
clo-
it gets approved.
so could
That's
you,
correct.
could you close,
So-
so
That's right.
procedurally, could we do the vote to see? If, I don't understand how that would work. So if we approve or deny, if we deny, it's done. If we
Yeah.
approve, then after that, we would close the public hearing. I don't think it works that way. We have to close it first, right?
Closing the public hearing closes down any new public comments and closes any new information from being submitted. So
So are we looking, is anyone looking for any more information? I mean, we've asked for information and either have gotten it or haven't.
Yeah, I don't think I need anything else.
Yeah, so I don't see any harm in closing the public hearing.
and then you would do your actual vote at the meeting when the decision is presented.
Is presented, but
Right.
now we would. There'd be a motion to approve the relief as requested with conditions to be discussed at later.
Well, no, I think
Because you're closing the hearing.
your motion would be to close the public hearing.
Yeah.
And have a draft decision for approval presented at your next meeting. Then you would review the decision, you'd go through it, and then you would take the vote.
The difficulty with that, though, is that maybe the conditions would make a difference in terms of whether or not somebody would vote on it.
Right.
I mean, how do you,
Then you wouldn't approve.
Then you would deny
of
the,
okay,
Conditions.
And you can talk amongst yourselves during the review of the decision. You just wouldn't take new public comment and you wouldn't
And the-
accept new
The
information.
final vote would be the decision with the conditions,
Yeah.
and you either approve or deny that. So if the
Yes.
conditions change, you're only,
so we're not voting to approve or deny right now.
We're
We're just
approving to get a
approving
draft
to
decision.
continue based on a drafted list of conditions
without public comment.
without public comment. Okay.
Okay.
Which would allow you to continue to adjust the conditions amongst the
But then
board.
we could still
Is that correct,
completely
Ms.
deny the whole thing if we wanted to.
yes, it would
Okay.
still be at the table.
Okay. Sarah, you have something to add?
It's just a point of order. Do you know when your action deadline is?
It's
We got,
June 22nd.
Okay,
So if we had a decision for the May meeting, we should be good.
great.
Okay, so, would someone make a motion then to close the public hearing?
okay, I'll make that motion.
Then would somebody,
Second.
okay, so, So I'll just do roll call again. Elisa,
I to
close the public.
close the
hearing.
public hearing.
Lisa,
Aye.
myself, I,
Aye.
Michael and Jim.
Aye.
Okay, and so then we would have a motion to have a draft decision with conditions to review at our review, discuss, and maybe approve at the May 11th. So would someone make that motion?
And then a vote would be taken then. So moved.
Someone second?
Second.
Okay, so Michael second. So for roll call vote, Lisa,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
myself, I, sorry, Michael
Aye.
and Jim.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll look at that in May.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the board.
All right, so that was everything else on the agenda was continued today. So we can.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, so Jim makes a motion, Lisa,
Second.
motion, Lisa seconds, all those in favor, this one. we can just-
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
Good job.